What else? So what do you suggest? What else? Do we need to stick out and then hold a press conference? Do we hold a press conference Tuesday and say that we are doing that, or you hold a press conference on the Wednesday? What I'm saying is, let us, let's take this idea and see how can we build on it. I'm going to bring Steve Moore. Before you answer that, Ms. McLean, Steve Moore is waiting to speak. Steve, take a good night. Good to see you. I know you're Bajan living in the U.S. Take a couple minutes and share, because we want to get into some practical stuff now. Go ahead, Steve.
UK, Marcia. Now, first of all, right, with what they want to do, yes, it's good to get out there and march or protest, whatever, in the hot sun and get dehydrated, because I'm very controversial. The first thing that they want you to do is to get up Monday and go out there in the hot sun and get dehydrated, whining your behind, doing nothing while they pass their bill. All right? That is not nice. We've got a government here that is run by family, because it looked like a family affair to me. And all of them are loyal to one person. They're not loyal to the Bajan or the Barbados public. They're not loyal to the poor people of the country. Something needs to be done right away, no matter what. I've always been saying people need to down tools, because it ain't getting any better. Second of all, this airport deal, who negotiated this airport deal? Because from what I know here, the Indians do a tight shift, the Chinese do a tight shift, they walk into Africa and Africans just back down and they get what they want. I'm suspecting that this is the same thing with the airport. Look, I'm so frustrated with what I see in Barbados from here in the UK. I don't know what to think. I'm just pulling me here out. Thank you very much, Marcia. I'm just pulling me here out.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I know you were there in the UK and very concerned about Barbados. But as we think about guys, what can we add to the sick out, to the one day, not going in for the Wednesday? What can be added to it, and to take what Ms. McLean is saying to heart, and to let's build on it, guys. And that's what I know Barbadians for. Let me tell you, Jamaicans will go now and just jump off. And we're not thinking about anything. You guys are very, very calculative. You're thinking it through, but you're gonna get it done. That's my belief about Barbadians. Let me hear from Miss Lynette Eastman is here. Lynette, let me make sure your mic is open. Hi, Miss Eastman. Thank you for joining. Yes.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for putting this session on. I personally, when I first heard about and this was some time ago, I can't remember when it was first announced, the plans that the government had for the national insurance scheme, especially in terms of its in terms of its structure. And I remember clearly one of the things that was said was that the NIS was now going to be used to invest in not just public sector projects, but private projects in Barbados, which sounded to me like a type of investment that normally you would not have for schemes like a national insurance scheme. I heard that very clearly. So it looked as though anybody in the private sector would be able to have access to these funds. I was very, very concerned about that, but very few people seem to have noticed that that was what was said, but it was said very clearly. In terms of the way that things are now being done in the legislature, many of us criticize what we call the Westminster system. But this system that we have is not the Westminster system. The reason that you publish legislation in the Gazette is so you publish it in the Gazette. I mean, this is the old traditional way. It was published in the Gazette, and the Gazette was cheap. And the reason that that was so that ordinary people could have access to the legislation, whether they read it or not, or whether a school teacher, they might have a school teacher somewhere who would go and get it and would always have the Gazette. It meant that people would have access to it. So what has started of late is that when you have legislation, it's not circulated for any period of time whatsoever. Caswell talks about the people in the Senate and the Parliament and whatever, but traditionally it was so that everybody could have access to it. And it would also mean that you would have time to call your constituency representative and say, look, I hear that they're saying they're going to pass this piece of legislation. I fully understand what it is, but you come and talk to us and tell us really what it means so that we can understand if we support it. Because I don't know how in a democracy like ours, where you vote for a representative, how you could pass anything in Parliament without discussing it with your constituents. You're supposed to discuss it with them first, and then you're supposed to go and represent them in the Parliament and decide if you're going to vote on it or not. So anybody who is going into Parliament who feels that they could just pick up a piece of legislation, talk, and vote for it, they're not pursuing their mandate, their duty as a constituency representative, because they should have had a discussion with their constituents first. And, you know, I say this quite often, but people seem to feel it's a joke, but that's how democracies are supposed to work. They're not representing themselves. They're supposed to be representing us who voted for them or who did not vote for them. They're supposed to come and tell us what the bill is about before they go in there and speak. When they're going there and they read it and they speak, on whose behalf are they speaking? It can't be ours because they didn't discuss it with us. And this has been going on for some time. It needs to stop, and people need to insist that it stops. Now, the other point that I would like to make is about demonstrating, marching, and doing whatever else. Yes, you can you can also, for example, make recommendations to the Parliament, to your constituency representative, write letters, say how these changes are going to affect people negatively, see what amendments we can propose, all those things you can do. But I would like to say that within the history of the Caribbean, people demonstrating is what politicians fear most.
Yes.
They fear it so much that in the 60s and 70s, they passed public order legislation to stop people from demonstrating. They passed new legislation. So Barbados got a new piece of legislation in order to stop people from demonstrating. Trinidad had the Sedition Act for the longest time, but during the 60s and 70s, they ramped it up. And this was across the region. I came across probably only 2 countries in the region that did not double down on demonstrations during the 60s and 70s. And this is why we must know our history, because these things, these uprisings that you have had in the regions, like we talk about the 1930s riots, and we believe that they only had riots in Barbados. They were across the region. Correct. In the 60s and 70s, this was also across the region. I mean, the worst probably was in Trinidad, but I will tell you that when people get up and march, their response is, unfortunately, put legislation in place to quell it, make it more expensive for people to do it. And they have also imprisoned people. And in some cases, they have killed people for demonstrating, the political elite within the Caribbean. So this is not a joke, and this isn't anything that is partisan political at all. It has to do with a group of people who believe that they're political elites in the region. They still exist, and they believe that their mandate is not for the development of the region, because with all the assets that the region has, and our greatest assets is wonderful weather, 365 days of the year. There are not many countries in the world that have that asset. And then we have talent, and each country has something that it is known for, but still, we are ranked low on the Human Development Index and continue to fall every year. Why? Because I do not feel that amongst the political elite that they have any intention to develop the countries of the region any further. And you see, I rebel when I hear this talk about Barbadians being passive and other people not being passive. The problem in the region is the same. And this talk about the differences between Barbadians and Trinidadians and Jamaicans and Guyanese and Vincentians, it is part of the strategy to keep us apart. Because if we were actually to work together in the region for the development of the region, the political elite could not stop us. But they're so confident that we are going to remain divided, that Bajans and like Trinidadians and Jamaicans and like Vincentians and all that kind of nonsense. I think we have to stop that. Yes, we may be different in some ways, but it is superficial. All of the uprisings that you have had in the 30s, the 60s, whatever it is, it was across the region, and there were Barbadians involved just like anywhere else. So that is a fallacy. We may do things differently, but when you look at the end result as to where we are in the region, we're all the same place, still with a class of people that don't look as though they will ever be able to extract themselves from poverty. There are areas in Barbados that you go that, you go down St. James and you look at the facilities down St. James. Even when people have supermarkets, the ones down the West Coast are better than the ones that they have up on the South Coast. It's a fact, because they're not doing it for Barbadians, they're doing it for the people that visit. And that's just a fact. And then you have people in Barbados who don't have any flooring boards. You might drive along and say, oh, that's a pretty chattel house. But when you open the door, there are no flooring boards. And the thing that hurts me, the politicians in Barbados know this. Because they're the ones that push open everybody's door and they see what conditions people are living in. And they still don't do anything about it when I think that they can do better. So that's my final point. My final point is that getting out there and marching makes a difference. Politicians sit up and listen and they take action. Now, because one of the things that came to me, I worked dealing with the CARICOM single market and economy for quite a while. I travel around the region and talk to different people, etc. And it only dawned on me recently that you had these uprisings in the 60s and the 70s. And what did the political elite came up with? They signed the Treaty of Chaguaramas to tell the people, we looking after you, all is well. And the people settled down. And they have not sat up again since the 1970s to say anything to the political elite in the region that this cannot continue. I worked on the CARICOM circuit, So, you in Barbados, you see that there are certain people who get jobs. You see there are certain people who people say, man, you can't let him starve, you gotta give him work to do. No matter which party is in power. Well, I saw it on the CARICOM circuit where it was said, that, oh man, she's his daughter, so she gotta get work, give she a consultancy. So it happens across the region. Well, there are individuals that we pay our taxes to educate them. And then when they come back in this space, because of this preferential treatment of certain people, they don't have the ability to share their knowledge and their skills with us, with all of us. Because I am one of the people who I'm looking for somebody to rise up in the region and do something great. Because I know that I will benefit. Take it being selfish. I know that I will benefit, but we continue to oppress and suppress the people with ability, because my view is that there's a political elite in the region. They all know each other. They meet with each other. And I don't think that they're interested in the development of the region, only to the extent that it continues to be a nice place to live. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that's I mean, that was a lot of history there, and putting things in context. And I think that was so important. That was like a nice plate of food. That was really, really good. Very good. Thank you so much for your input. And so you're adding to this call to action and saying that well, the sick out is fine, but one of the things that they fear most, well, what they fear most is the people on the street. And I saw that with the vaccine when they had the stuff with the injection. I can't say that too much on my thing. And also, you know, with us going out, if you notice all the things that have been coming out against the people who've been going out about the children, because they fear that. They actually came out and said to us, we got messages to tell us don't march. We got those, you know, and so they're afraid of that. They're afraid of the public display. It's going to be embarrassing. They don't want the people, the international people, to see any unrest in Barbados. Come on, guys. So in addition, we've got to get out there. We will have to get up. We're going to have to hit the pavement. We got to go out there. It's important to register. It's important to do what Ms. McLean is saying. Ms. McLean is saying, make it very clear as to exactly why we are. If you're going to sick out, why you're sicking out. If you're going to go out, if you're going to go out and demonstrate why you're going out, be very, very clear. And that can be done with press releases, press conference, organizers. It's Barbados, intelligent people. You know, you do things very orderly. You know, you don't like setting up page and going to be breaking windows and you know, and doing all kind of rioting. Although, let me tell you something, they need to be careful, because there is a subculture that is happening here. And if you keep pressing that button, you keep pushing the people, I'm sorry, they need to be careful, be very careful of that. It's not the same Barbados that I came to 20 years ago. It's a different set of people, you know. So we have to be somebody here saying we need an academic approach. Yes, we need an academic approach. We need to be able to you know, to get all these ideas, but we got to do something, you know, because we can't just keep talking about it. Emmanuel, you're still here. I don't see you've been hearing and then I'm gonna go to Mr. Franklyn and Ms. McLean to close off the evening. Go ahead.
I just want to make one small point on the historical front. And this is only because I happen to be doing some research. But during the 60s, when we had some uprisings in Barbados, in that there were meetings and people were talking, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that they did, there was a magazine or newspaper that was published. I don't remember the name of it now, but of course it was considered to be subversive. And the government of the day carried up the price that you had to pay in order to publish a newspaper. And this was just a little newspaper that these people were putting out. So it does not surprise me that you have to pay more money for Zoom now. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
It is the same thing, Lynette.
It's the same thing happening over and over again.
Over and over. Can I tell you something? The first time that we were going out for our marches, those of you who might not know, I might have just joined. I'm Marcia Weeks, and I'm part of a group, Watch Out My Children, and we conduct several protests. We've conducted several protests and so on in Barbados. And I remember we were going out, and I went to the police, and I love them. They've become my friend. But there's some people there trying to dissuade me. And so they basically more than doubled the price on me for that permit. I don't know if you all remember when I took to Facebook and begged the people. I have no shame. I went on Facebook and I told the people how much it was. And the people, Mr. Franklyn, the people gave me 4 times as much to pay that money. And let me tell you something. Do you know that same police service, they contacted me and said, listen, guess what? They overcharged you. And they gave me back the money, which we're able to use for another march. So I agree with you. And I could tell from the conversation that she thought I was going to say, when she started to tell me, this high price, she thought and tell me to bring it the next day at 12 o'clock. She thought I wasn't going to bother. She thought it wasn't going to happen. I went into character on her, and I just acted like I had the money. And I said, yes, I'll be there. And went straight to Facebook and got that money. And this is why I'm saying that Barbadians, listen, they don't play with Bajan people. Don't play with Bajan people. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, right? And I agree with you. They try to find tactics to make sure that you don't go out there and march, because that is what they are most afraid of. Go ahead, Emmanuel. Do you have anything to add to next steps? Next steps.
Yes, thanks, Marcia, and good night to you, Ms. Eastman. It's good to see you. I think you articulated it very intellectually. What I will say is that most Barbadians listening and those that will hear about this in the days to come, the reality is that a lot of people find themselves in a lower bracket. There's only a certain percentage of people who may benefit from this change in some form or the other. So for the most part, I think Malcolm X said it best. In order to get action from the people, you have to first wake the people. A lot of people are ignorant to what is really going on. They hear the voice notes, they see the videos, they hear different things, and they're really uncertain as to, okay, so what next? They said we're going to stay home, and like you said, Caswell, and I follow why you would say that. I don't know if I agree with you on that, in that folks might have reservations and not stay home, but the reality is, in their hearts, they may want to. But the people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And the reality is Barbadians are not always informed in order to make informed decisions. So yes, while we have these platforms and we have these conversations, we should always use them, not to intellectualize the madness of government, because we all know from time memorial, the government, whether B or D, there's no difference. They're all really the same. They've done the same thing and played political ping pong with the people's emotions for as long as we can remember. The point I want to bring home is that in order to get the kind of action that we are discussing, in order to bring effect, we have to first understand what is it that we're really asking for. Because we've asked for things ranging from mandates for certain jobs. We've asked for things from different instruments that were infringed on our schools and our children. We've asked for different things from the dress code, the different children protection. We've asked for a lot of things. And at this point, we're still asking, and we are asking and asking and asking and asking, at what time, at what point do we become emotionally and spiritually frustrated enough to recognize we got to stop asking the government to do for us what we ought to be doing for ourselves? They're the administration. We need to first stop calling them government. They're not the government. They're the admins that we put in place to govern our affairs. So we need to start learning and educating ourselves. So I'm going to encourage Marcia and Brother Caswell and the others here to start having conversations with your circles, your groups, on what governance and government really is all about. Empower the people. Give the people back the power so they'll know how to make informed decisions. They can't make informed decisions, Marcia. We're looking to have them make emotional decisions. Oh, they're going to work you to death. Yo, come out and let's march. Wait a minute. Some folks are not thinking along those lines, but if they can understand and have a clear realization, well, wait a minute, this is wrong. There's something wrong with this. It's going to affect not only me, but the generations to come. Then we can have the action. In fact, Marcia, you won't even have to ask them to come out. You're going to find right first and foremost that when they go to work, they start asking their boss, listen, you need to stop paying my money into national insurance. I want to take responsibility for my own pension insurance. I want to take my own policy with some other private entity. I don't want to go this route. The whole direction this thing is going is to be privatized. and we know it. Whether they outrightly say it or not, in time to come, if they disrupt it enough and get enough people to be disgruntled by what is happening, they're going to pull out. So in order to get them to respond to the idea of staying home on Wednesday and perhaps Thursday and then going to work on Friday to then go back to work next week, we know the government don't like protests. And again, Ms. Eastman said it, they don't like it. But the reality is, unlike France or Europe or these American, America, let me use that, where people have known freedom. So when you try to infringe on their freedoms, they act. Barbadians as a people, for the most part, have never known freedom. They're born in captivity. They're born into the idea of governing by people who look like you, which makes Barbados a neo-colony. They won't have the same effect. It won't have the same effect and reaction. So we have to first educate people, let them understand what this is really all about, how it's going to affect them. And I agree, Ms. Eastman, these ministers are supposed to be reporting to the people, but they not, and they have not for quite some time. So in an effort to make them aware, and I'll say this in closing, in an effort to make them conscious of their unconsciousness, what the people have to do, the ones who are mostly oppressed, they have to take a different approach. And the only way out of this is to start re-educating the people, letting them know about their sovereign status, let them know what governance and governing is all about, and stop begging like beggars to these ministers who are just admin, who simply have one intention, and Mr. Caswell said it all evening, their pension isn't being affected. Their paychecks aren't being affected. In fact, their way of life would not be affected. Only the people, and the people who suffer the most are those who feel it. So I haven't said that. If you want action from the people, Marcia, I'm going to agree with you. Things need to happen. But what needs to happen first, we need to have educational forums so that our people are not destroyed for the lack of knowledge.
Yes, that's awesome. And, thank you. Well said. And I think that's what Ms. McLean was getting at as well. And this is what, I don't know if anybody heard the beginning of the show. Mr. Franklyn came on and outlined everything, the issues with the two bills. And Ms. McLean came on and talked about how the procedures and how it was done. Lynette came on and added some more. Winston came on and added some more. And I believe, Emmanuel, you have a show. You can continue to do that. I'm going to open up my show again tomorrow night to do that, because it's not going to happen on the traditional media. So we can talk about education. We do, you continue to educate. But as we educate, if we say we're not going to do anything until everybody's educated and educated a certain way, we can use social media. Social media is what we have, and to be able to look at the full, just look at everything and begin to come up with action plan. Mr. Franklyn has, he has those in his union. We can do a press conference and send out information. There's so many things that can happen with social media to educate, because that's what's being used right now. We're not going to get it on traditional media, and we have to find in practical ways to get the information out. Before Mr. Franklyn or Ms. McLean give us a final word,